I can't believe we're already in the home stretch of the 2025 season. Washington is heading down to UCLA for their final road trip.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thanks for making this your first watch or first listen of the days. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And just a quick reminder to all you readers out there, wherever you're getting this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, make sure to click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help the show out a lot. Now, I got a really fun show coming at all you videos out there today. You know how much we love these. Here on Locked On Huskies, we're talking bold predictions and all the like a little bit later on. We're talking about some defensive keys to success at the Rose Bowl. But as always, we start on the offensive side of the ball. And this is a game where I'm really intrigued with how Jedd Fisch is going to want to come out and attack this UCLA defense, because I think the plan should be very, very simple. And it's come out, establish the run, and assert yourself physically, because we saw this last week against Purdue, where the Huskies were able to come out, run for 212 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. 5, if you had the Kai Horton one at the end of the game as well. But you were able to really establish yourself on the ground, and that was without Jonah Coleman. We saw a tremendous day from Adam Mohammed, a real breakout performance from Jordan Washington, and with or without Jonah, who I'm going to just deem as questionable for this game, even though Jedd Fisch said there's a good chance that he will be able to suit up and play. We have no idea what his snap count is going to look like. He could play 5, he could play 40. There is just no way of knowing at this point in time. So no matter what, though, this is one of those games where the Huskies have all the tools that they need to run the ball effectively. And it starts with Dezmen Williams, it starts with Adam Mohammed, it starts with Jordan Washington, because you could throw 3 very different running styles at UCLA at any given point. And the good news is UCLA's run defense has not been good this year. They are second to last in the Big Ten, allowing 194.2 yards per game on the ground. So however you feel that you can attack them best without, guys like Jay Toya and Carson Schweschinger who are gone, there are several different ways that you can attack this UCLA front seven, whether it be stretching them outside the tackle box with Jordan Washington, with somebody like Dezmen Williams in the read option game, who has proven that he can be just excellent in tight spaces at making guys miss, and then his acceleration is just second to none. And obviously Adam Mohammed, he's got the wiggle between the tackle boxes. He's got the power to run through guys on the goal line. He also has a little bit of long end speed too. So however you feel that you can attack this UCLA this UCLA defense on the ground, I feel like you are going to have an advantage. And a lot of that comes down to what you're able to roll out on the offensive line too. Because I look at the group that we're probably going to see start, I feel like it's going to be the same unit that we saw last week, where it's Carver Willis at left tackle, Paki Finau at left guard, Zach Henning at center, Champ Talialia and Gieran Hatchett rotating in at right guard. I think Gieran will still get the start. And then John Mills at right tackle. That's a really solid unit. And last week we saw a split right down the middle between Champ and Gieran, whereas 32 snaps for Champ, I believe, and 31 for Gieran. So really, just really even split in that regard, which I think is really interesting, because I know the biggest thing with Champ coming in was Washington wanted to see him continue to improve as a pass protector, and we've absolutely seen that so far. But this is a dude who, he was listed at 6'4", 350 pounds when he got here. He is an absolute road grader. Him and John Mills on the right side is a really fun concept, not just for this game, but moving forward as well, considering just what this offensive line could look like in 2026 and beyond. That could be the right side of your offensive line, depending on what your plan is with Cody Green when he gets here and different things like that. But that's not a conversation for today. But what is a conversation for today is what that could look like against the Bruins, because like I said, they don't have that NFL size up front. They don't have that NFL talent at linebacker at this point in time, as our buddy Zach Anderson-Yoxheimer mentioned on our Wednesday crossover edition. So this is something that I'm going to be monitoring very closely, because again, no matter who has the ball for Washington, they have an opportunity to create some big plays. And I think that Jedd Fisch showed last week that he is able to scheme up a running game that can certainly take advantage of some of these lesser teams in the Big Ten. And we've seen it succeed against some higher end teams as well. But right now, this is the opportunity that you have in front of you to get that 8th win, to get to over 500 on the road in your second season. Those are really, really important. And this is one of those games where Jedd Fisch cannot falter. Jedd Fisch has to come out with a solid plan of attack, and this is by far the best course of action. I think that UCLA's pass defense might not necessarily be all it's chalked up to be when you look at the numbers, where they're 7th in the Big Ten, allowing 188 yards per game through the air. But I think some of that is just because of their struggles on the ground. So if Jedd wants to come out and pound the rock and run it 25, 30 times in the first half, assuming they run that many plays, I don't think that anybody should have an issue with that, because that is a really solid plan of attack. And especially when we look at this team's struggles on the road, just over Jedd Fisch's tenure, that is a really great way of just controlling the pace of the game. Because, yeah, you can still rip off explosive plays and everything, but if you're able to carve out a couple of 12, 13, 14 play drives, like we also saw against Purdue, that is just a great way to get into UCLA, where we've talked about Washington's struggles there since 1990, where they're 2-10 against the Bruins in Pasadena, and just grind the game out and get out with a victory. And I think that's a really great way to just kind of think about all this. But obviously, you can't just be a one-trick pony in this kind of game. And one thing is, if Washington is able to run the ball effectively, I'm very curious as to what that might open up in terms of play action, because this could be a shorthanded wide receiver unit for the second straight week. It sounds like Denzel Boston's status is still up in the air. I'd lean towards him maybe playing in some limited capacity, but if Washington wants to play it safe, make sure he's healthy for Oregon. I'm also not going to be shocked in that regard. And this is also considering Raiden Vinesbright, who's still in concussion protocol after he had to be taken off the field in an ambulance last week. It's good news that the injury is not more severe, but he could also be out of this game. So Washington could be down to just one of their starters that they've had for the majority of the season in Dezmen Roebuck. And I'm curious what Omari Evans' role might be, what guys like Kevin Green might be able to do in this game, and Chris Lawson as well, because those are all guys who we've seen them contribute in some way, shape, or form, not just the season, but Chris Lawson was just such an impressive player in practice in spring camp before an injury caused him to miss the majority of fall practice. And that's a guy that I look at and I just think back to, I know I've said it already on the show this week, as whoever dares know, but I think it's very important to note that this coaching staff has been so complimentary of Chris Lawson, who's the highest rated recruit that they brought in at wide receiver in the 2025 class. And he was in line to compete with Raiden Vinesbright and compete with Dezmen Roebuck for one of those starting jobs that those guys earn. But because he was so far behind at the end of fall camp because of those injuries, it took him a little bit longer to get back in the mix. And this could be one of those games where if the Huskies are shorthanded, if Denzel is limited or unable to play, if Raiden is unable to suit up, I'm curious if he's going to be that third starting receiver alongside Omari Evans, who started last week, in Dezmen Roebuck. And in the play action game, I think that this is one of those things that just really plays to the skill set of Lawson, who I was really impressed with what he was able to do with the ball in his hands during spring practice, and with just some of the play action stuff that Jedd Fisch likes to run. There are so many bootlegs and there's so many different things to get Demond Williams out of the pocket. They really like that slide action where they send a receiver just running in front of the quarterback and forcing the free defender to choose whether to stick with the receiver or come after the quarterback. And I think that's one of the things in this game that I'm really interested in watching, because Demond, as I was just talking about, is so electric outside of the pocket with his legs. But if UCLA chooses to just crash down on Demond and try to take away his legs, just like Purdue did last week, I feel like he'd have no trouble getting that ball out to an Omari Evans or to a Chris Lawson, who are just so good at making plays in space with the ball in their hands. And I'm excited to see if that's just one of the things that Jedd Fisch wants to go to in this game, because Washington has a major opportunity to get back to Seattle with their 8th win and prepare for Oregon. And it's just a matter of not faltering on the road. And we've seen the offense be really up and down in some of these road games this year. I don't know if it's a time zone thing or whatever. That's not a conversation for today either. But I think that this is one of those games where you need to prove that you can come out with a solid plan of attack on the offensive side of the ball, because the defense, they have absolutely been holding their own over the last couple of weeks. And we'll get to that right after a message from our good friends over at Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. The app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before buying. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We've also got a message from our good friends over at Doer. I'm so excited about these new jeans that I got in from Doer. I had a great time rocking them against Purdue because they really were some of the most comfortable jeans I've ever worn in my life. And part of that is because Doer jeans have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim, and they're antibacterial, meaning your jeans stay fresh longer so you can wear more and wash less. And made with Cool Max that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture, they keep you cool and comfortable as temperature changes. Doer combines classic jeans wear with the kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. It really is the best of both worlds. Simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. Trust me, once you try these, they'll be your go-to. Get a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go now to shopdoer.com/LockedOnSeattle. You'll get 15% off your first order. That's shopdoer.com/LockedOnSeattle for 15% off. One more time, shopdoer.com/LockedOnSeattle. So just like the plan is on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's also very, very simple on the defensive side. You need to get pressure up front. You need to spy Nico Iamaleava if he is playing. We're going to operate under that assumption for the time being. And you also need to man up on the outside. So let's break this down a little bit. You look at UCLA's offensive line, it hasn't necessarily been one of the premier units in the conference so far this year. They've allowed 22 sacks, and they could be without a couple of starters this weekend who got banged up in their last loss against Ohio State. So for a unit like that, Washington's defensive line, it hasn't necessarily been elite either, but it's really coming on as of late. They tied their record for the most this season with 3 sacks last week against Purdue. And they also had the second most tackles for loss. That's another tie with 6 last week against Purdue. So I look at this game and I think Washington's front seven has really been playing better. And I think the addition of Zaydrius Rainey-Sale has been a really big part of that. And I'll get to a little bit more with that in a minute. But I want to start with some of these defensive linemen because Zach Durfee has been really solid for the last couple of weeks. Tacario Uiagalelei has been really consistent all year. We saw Ontario Thompson hit home for his first sack against Purdue last week. And if you can continue to get pressure from the interior and have guys like Zach Durfee and Jacob Lane continue to give you just enough on the edge right now. Maybe you get Isaiah Ward back this week. It seems like his status is still up in the air as well. All of a sudden, you're able to just collapse the pocket on whoever. If it is Nico, again, we're going to operate under that assumption for now, or if it is Luke Duncan, and just really try to just force the ball out of their hands really quickly. And in the case of Nico, he's going to want to take off and run. He's UCLA's leading rusher on the season. And I look at Washington's linebacker core, especially Zaydrius in particular, and I think that Washington has the athletic advantage. I think Nico has had a solid year for UCLA. I don't think it's been stellar by any regards, but I don't think it's been subpar either, especially considering the circumstances that he's been thrown into. But I look at what Zaydrius Rainey-Sale is, and I think that he is on track to become one of the best linebackers in the conference, honestly, as soon as next season. We could see him take a very, very big jump now that he's got a full offseason of just healthy work ahead of him. Instead of having to rehab from a knee injury, he's able to fully embrace the college strength program. And we're seeing the way he's able to fly around the field right now and make plays. We saw him out there for a career high 57 snaps, I believe it was, against Purdue this last weekend. And I feel like we're going to continue to see him get reps in that regard because of how versatile he is. He can line up at inside linebacker. He can line up at outside linebacker. And this is one of those games where you might have one very particular assignment for him where I like what he can give you as a pass rusher at some points in time, but I don't think you're going to need that in a game like this, where I look at how Mason Posa treated Damon Williams a couple of weeks ago, where he lined up at outside linebacker a fair amount, but then just dropped into a spy. I feel like we might see that a little bit from Zaydrius, especially if Nico is the starting quarterback, because again, Nico does like to take off and run, and he's been really effective when he has been able to get outside the pocket and get upfield. So I think that Zaydrius is the kind of guy who can run with him sideline to sideline and just close those gaps really, really quickly, while X-Ray Alexander has been really impressive in especially just a downhill thumper sort of role. I like what Devin Bryant's been able to give you as a just true run defending inside linebacker throughout the season. And with Zaydrius, what he's able to give you, not just as an athlete, but from a pass defense standpoint, especially if Washington, they're 10.5 points point favorites, excuse me, in this game, according to FanDuel. So there's a really good chance that you're playing from ahead in this matchup. And there's a chance that you were able to have a positive game script and force UCLA to try to come from behind and throw the ball. And Zaydrius is one of those guys who should absolutely just continue to stay out there for a good majority of the snaps as he continues to get his legs under him. And it's very clear that he is improving extremely quickly and just is really learning not just the speed of the game, but where he needs to be on every single play. You talk to any members of the coaching staff about him and what he's able to give you from a communication standpoint, from just an understanding of the playbook standpoint already at this point in his career. And there's no reason to not play him in a game like this, especially with, you just look around the defense. There are so many young building blocks. You look at Alex McLaughlin and Riley Dillon at safety. You look at Dylan Robinson, who got some reps against Purdue last week, and Rashawn Clark in the secondary. You look up front where some of these guys do have eligibility to come back next year, whether it be Elenius Davis, Bryce Butler, Jacob Lane. There are still some building blocks that you can have him just really settle in with. And the linebacker core is really, really exciting to think about for next year as well, with Jacob Manu coming back, with Devin Bryant and X-Ray Alexander, and some of these other guys that are continuing to develop. There's so much to like about what Washington's defense is right now. And this is one of those games where you have an opportunity to show the nation why, because you're not going to have Tacario Davis or Ephesians Prysock back next season. But I mentioned Dylan Robinson, and this is one of those games where you could really see a jump from him if Jedd Fisch and Ryan Walters want to give him a little bit more playing time, because I look at what's going on the outside, and I don't feel necessarily overly threatened by any of these UCLA wide receivers to take advantage of what Washington can do on the outside in terms of press man coverage in the base defense that Ryan Walters likes to run, because UCLA has not necessarily been overly effective through the air this year. They're number 14 in the Big Ten, averaging 181.3 yards per game. And as I look at what Washington's pass defense has evolved into over the course of the year, as Tacario Davis has gotten healthy, as Rashawn Clark has asserted himself as the starting nickelback, and as Alex McLaughlin has continued to prove that he is the playmaker that Washington has needed at safety to really just tie this defense all together, I think that this is one of those games where the Huskies can, again, just really assert themselves on the back end, where maybe you're able to come away with a couple of turnovers. I'll talk about that in a little while, but more often than not, it's just a matter of forcing bad throws, because we know Nico Iamaleava has not necessarily been the peak definition of accuracy over the course of his career. And Ryan Walters, during his Tuesday press conference, was very complimentary of Nico because he is an extremely talented quarterback, but it's just some of the finer things that, in my opinion, have not been there over the course of his career that have just led to issues in one way or another. And those are issues that, against this Washington secondary with a pair of suffocating 6'4" corners on the outside, are going to be very apparent if he is especially under some pressure and forced to get the ball out before he's ready to get rid of it. And this is one of those things that I'm just super interested in with this matchup as a whole, because again, this is what I've been saying about this Husky defense all season long, is that the talent is there. At all three levels, the talent is absolutely there for it to be one of the better units in the Big Ten. And it's nice to see the defensive line finally coming along, yes, against some weaker competition, when you look at what they're able to do against Wisconsin and what they were able to do, especially last week against Purdue as well. It's not necessarily the strongest, but that's who's in front of you. So that's how you have to judge this defensive line by, is by how they're playing with whoever is across from you. If you're in the college football playoff, which obviously those dreams are, null and void at this point. But if you're in the college football playoff and playing, whoever it might be, all of a sudden that's a different discussion point. But as of right now, you are, again, playing a beat up UCLA offensive line, a team that has certainly lost all the luster after its 3-game winning streak under Tim Skipper and Jerry Neuheisel. And we've just seen all those things wear off as they went and got stomped on at Indiana. They got stomped on again at Ohio State last week without a trio of offensive starters. So this is one of those games where, with all of the talent that Washington has on the defensive side of the ball, there are many ways that Ryan Walters' unit can take advantage of what this UCLA offense is. And I don't necessarily think it's an overly complex plan of attack against this defense, against this UCLA offense, because like I said, it hasn't necessarily been overly efficient for the last couple of weeks. And the Huskies, they have several opportunities to take advantages of maybe a bad throw. Maybe UCLA will put the ball on the ground at some point. And I want to talk about turnovers and the bold predictions, so let's jump over there. right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. And just a quick reminder that Washington is 10.5 points in favorites in this game, according to our good friends over at FanDuel, and it keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's start on the defensive side today with some of these bold predictions. I know we usually start on the offensive side, but let's change things up a little bit here because I mentioned turnovers, and that's something that I do think is going to be a big key to this game, but I also don't think that this is going to be a game where Washington winds up with 2-3 interceptions like we like to do on here sometimes. I do think they end up with one, but what I do think Washington ends up doing in this game, and this is, I don't know if we've done one like this before, or at least in a very long time. I think Washington is going to have 5 or 6. I'm going to go with 6 pass breakups in this game. I just love what Tacario Davis and Ephesians Prysock bring on the outside. And Rashawn Clark is someone who has really impressed me all season long in the nickel. And again, like I said earlier, seeing him take over during the Illinois game, get his first career interception in that moment, and just continue to build and thrive from there has been a lot of fun to watch. And he's someone who is going to be such a big part of the secondary. I think those 3 guys combined are going to have a really, really nice day against this UCLA passing attack. So give me 6 pass breakups from them. And let's take it a step further. I'm going to say that Tacario Davis and Rashawn Clark have 2 each. Let's go with that. All right. Let's stay in the secondary here for a little bit because it's not a bold prediction segment if we don't talk about leading tacklers. And yeah, I'm going to go with the guy who's been leading the Huskies in tackles all season long in Alex McLaughlin. Give me 10 plus tackles for him today. I know I talked a little bit earlier on about Zaydrius Rainey-Sale probably being the primary guy to spy Nico Iamaleava, assuming he does play in this game. But I think that the other guy who might rotate through in that regard is Alex, with the way that this coaching staff has asked him to do so much this year, where he's played that pseudo inside linebacker box safety role. He's played over the top in free safety. He's come down and played a nickel or a dime corner role. There are so many different things that Alex does. And this is one of those games where if he does wind up being a secondary spy option on a couple of these different plays, I'm not going to be super shocked. But if that is Zaydrius and he is taken out of plays, if UCLA wants to go to a read option or go to some of these other things that Jerry Neuheisel has found success with over the course of the season, I feel like Alex is one of those guys who's going to be in the mix of everything because, this part's not that bold. He's been doing that all season long. And I've just been so impressed with what he's brought to the table and how he's just stepped in and become such a productive player right away in the middle of this Ryan Walters defense. It's very reminiscent of his 2 years at Northern Arizona, but seeing him continue to add weight and do that at the Big Ten level is something that really, really should be exciting for Husky fans, because he's not only does he have a year of eligibility remaining, but Washington has done such a great job of recruiting the secondary. I know I've talked about this before and I'm going to talk about it again, but you look at this 26 recruiting class right now and Gavin Day, who's bumped up into the top 100 overall prospects, according to 247 Sports. Rajon Duncan is someone who can play outside corner, can play a little bit of safety if need be. He's got that flexibility and that big hitting ability. He's another guy who could fill this mold really, really well in a couple of years. And you combine somebody like that with a Ryland Dillard-Allen and what he's able to bring over the top. I look at the 2027 class, and Washington is sitting in a really good spot with 4-star safety Isala Asa Wiliava as well. I look at some of these other names that Washington has been recruiting in the secondary to fill this Alex McLaughlin role whenever he does depart for the NFL. And I think that this is just such a key piece of this Ryan Walters secondary, as long as he's going to be around, a safety that can just basically be a stand-in linebacker and be probably the most productive player on your team. And seeing Alex do that has been so much fun. And I do feel like that's going to continue in this game against UCLA. One more on the defensive side here. I know I talked about this also a little bit earlier. Washington had 3 sacks in their last game that tied their season high against Purdue. And I think that we're going to see that again. I have Washington as or just as a whole getting 3 sacks in this game. I was going to take it a step further and get into some specifics, but I don't think I need to in this game because I just look at what this defensive line has done. Maybe we'll see a couple of half sacks, which will help make me feel a little bit better about not getting super particular here. But I look at this unit and I have been really pleased again with what this defensive line has been able to do over the last couple of weeks. And I look at guys like Tacario Thompson, Taitayu Iamaleava, Bryce Butler, Elenius Davis in the middle as probably the majority of the rotation right now after you lose Armand Parker for the season. It's very clear this coaching staff wants Javon Parker to continue to get healthy while he's coming off the knee and Achilles injuries that he's rehabbing from that he suffered last season. I like where this group is right now, Logan Sagapolu and Simone Pepa being the two nose tackles in this mix as well. I think this group is in a solid spot with a couple of those guys having eligibility to return. If you're able to put together a really solid, just full month of the final season, just heading into the bowl game, heading into 2026, this team can still go out and add some guys in the transfer portal. You can still continue to build on that success, but also know that, hey, maybe this guy comes in and starts from the portal, and that's great. But knowing that Bryce Butler and Elenius Davis and Javon Parker and whoever else are all also going to be part of that rotation is a really exciting thought. And seeing that just, again, continue to build momentum in this game is so, so important. Whether it is Luke Duncan, whether it is Nico Iamaleava, getting into the backfield and getting pressure is going to be such a key piece in this game. So give me 3 sacks. I think that that's safe enough, not overly bold, but not necessarily an easy feat either. So with that being said, let's move on to the offensive side of the ball here because I got 2 more for you. Let's start at wide receiver because I'm so curious to see how this rotation is going to pan out over the course of this game. And again, like I said earlier, a lot of that does depend on the health of some players out wide. But no matter what, I think that this is going to be a really big game for Penn State transfer Omari Evans. I know there have been a lot of people that have been clamoring to see more and more of him all season long, and seeing him start to, again, just build some of that momentum down the stretch is a really, really nice sign. So give me 4+ catches for Omari in this game and a touchdown. I think that he's one of those guys who, if it's just at some point in this game, a 40 or 50 yard touchdown bomb, I'm not necessarily going to be surprised, but if he starts to show off a little bit more consistency in his game as well, working at all 3 levels of the field, maybe filling the Denzel Boston role if he's unable to suit up and play in this game, I feel really good about where Omari is right now, and seeing him build up over the course of the year. Obviously, it was a really disappointing start where he misses the first couple of games with an injury and then kind of gets passed up by Chris Lawson, by Raiden Finesbury, by Dezmen Roebuck, who all just had similar, if not more reps than him at different points this year. And I think that what Omari has brought to this team still is very valuable because whenever he's on the field, obviously his first catch was a 59-yard touchdown against Washington State. He is so valuable at stretching the field. He is such a good athlete. There's so much to like about his game, but I think that Washington just has wanted to get the offense going in several different ways with DeMond Williams underneath, and that those ways they've kept his completion percentage up, done different things like that. But Omari, this is one of those games where, especially considering the health of the position, you need to see a big game from that guy being the senior on his way out the door, going to the NFL draft. That is such an important part of him continuing to build up his stock and whatever might be next in his career. And I think we're going to see that in the Rose Bowl on Saturday. Last one for you today. Let's talk about Adam Mohammed. Whether Jonah Coleman does or doesn't play in this game, I think we're going to continue to see the breakout of Adam Mohammed. Give me 75 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns for him in this game. I think that Adam is somebody who I've always been really impressed with, just his physical makeup and what he brings to the field from not just a physicality perspective, but an energy perspective as well. You talk to anybody on the team about him, they're always very quick to mention just what kind of player and person he is off the field as well. And I think that this is one of those games where you continue to talk about things that Jedd Fisch is building off the field, whether they be the culture, trying to build up a better roster on a year in, year out basis. Those are all things where I think Adam Mohammed is a focal point of all that. Yeah, he was a lowly rated 3-star recruit coming out of high school, but he has proven that he can hang in the Big Ten. And this is going to be one of those games where I don't necessarily know if people are going to come away and saying, oh, wow, that was one of the best performances I've ever seen, because obviously that's, especially when Jonah Coleman is available to play, it's hard to compare the two, right? But I look at what Adam brings to the table, and he is absolutely somebody who can be a high caliber Big Ten running back because he's shown it before. He really impressed me at Wisconsin. He had a really nice game last week against Purdue. And if he can continue that momentum and maybe find the end zone a couple of times, maybe rip off a few more chunk runs, I've really liked what he's done from a contact balance perspective. I feel like we've seen that get better throughout the season. And as he continues to work himself in the receiving game as well on screens and different things like that, he is going to be such a big part of this offense next year, and I'm so excited about it. Last thing, as you everydayers know, I don't do pregame predictions because I am the world's biggest jinx. But when I look at this game, I do want to emphasize that when I looked at this game in the preseason, this was a game that I feel like Washington can win. And I'm going to stick with that here today, and I've stuck with that all season long because with the struggles that UCLA has seen over the last month or so, with some of the questions around the health on the offensive side of the ball, I feel like Washington has a great opportunity to come out of this house of horrors that has been the Rose Bowl for them against UCLA with a victory in this game. And I think it's going to be a blast. And one quick programming note, I am going to be at this game. And so the reaction show will be published on Sunday at some point. We're flying back up on Sunday morning. And so I'm hoping to have that to all you everydayers out there at some point that evening. And just to make sure that you don't miss that or any other shows here on Locked On Huskies, please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post new show. Plus, if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review as it does help the show out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you after the game.